Welcome back to the channel, everybody. What does Essendon need to do to kick more goals? That is the million-dollar question. Last year we finished 13th in terms of goals scored or offence, and we haven't had any notable inclusions into the team, apart from Isaac Karko, who hasn't played a game yet we've lost Jake Stringer, who kicked 40 goals for us. So how do we replace Jake Stringer? Do we replace Jake Stringer? Well, I don't think we do replace Jake Stringer. To quote one of my favourite movies in Moneyball, where Billy Bean, the manager of the Oakland Athletics, talking to a crusty old bunch of recruiters, says, "Guys, you're still trying to replace Jason Giambi, one of their best batters who left at the end of the previous season." He said, "I told you, we can't do it. But what we might be able to do is recreate him. Recreate him in the aggregate. And that is what we need to do to replace Jake Stringer, which is what I'm going to get into in this video."
See the ballers fly up to win the premiership flag.
If you like the content I provide, please consider subscribing to the channel. According to the numbers, about 92% of the people that are watching this video are not subscribed to the channel, which is absurd. Please subscribe. It takes 1 second to click that little button. It would help me out a lot, and I'd really appreciate it. So if you look at the goal kicking stats from the top 4 teams last year, or the 4 preliminary finalists, and you look at their top 9 goal kickers, the top 9 goal kickers for the Sydney Swans kicked 282 goals. The top 9 goal kickers for the Brisbane Lions kicked 294 goals. The top 9 goal kickers for Geelong kicked 268 goals, and the top 9 goal kickers for Port Adelaide kicked 217. Essendon, our top 9 goal kickers, kicked 196 goals, nearly 100 goals less than the top 9 goal kickers for the Brisbane Lions kicked. So what we need to do, I think, we need our top 9 goal kickers to kick around 250 goals. Now, it's easy to say that. The question is, how do we make that happen? Well, for starters, let's have a look at our top 9 goal kickers from last year. You can see it on the screen there. Kyle Langford kicked 43 goals, Stringer 42, Peter Wright 19, Jade Gresham 19, Harrison Jones 18, Matt Guelphy 15, Nicholas Martin 15, Zach Merritt 14, and Sam Draper 11. Now, I'm going to be taking a bit of a glass half full approach with this because, look, we might not be capable of our top 9 players on our list in terms of our goal kicking output kicking 250 goals, but that is what we are going to have to aspire to do if we are going to look at making the finals or perhaps do even better. So the first thing we really need to look at is the continued development of Nate Caddy. Now, Nate Caddy last year only kicked 9 goals. Now, with his continued development, I think it is reasonable to expect that he can average perhaps just over a goal a game. I don't think that is an unreasonable expectation. I've heard a few things that he said. He's quite optimistic. He is in a hurry to get his career underway and up and running. And I think he's a confident young man, and I think he's capable of kicking in the mid-20 goals. So he wasn't even a factor in our top 9 players last year, and I expect that, presuming he doesn't get injured and is able to play most games, he is able to kick in excess of 20 goals. I'm going to put him down for 28 goals, but I'm going to get to the totals a little bit later in the video. The second thing I think we need to do is to kick more goals from what I call chaos and less from structure. Essendon has the most uncontested possessions in the competition. Now, this might seem like a pretty good thing. We're getting the ball and we're not under any pressure when we're getting the ball. The problem with that is that when we get the ball into the forward line, because it takes a long time to move the ball into the forward line, often the opposition defence are set, and it's very difficult for Essendon to take contested marks, which is why that it's perhaps being a little bit too critical of Peter Wright, although he does need to increase his output anyway. Moving the ball quicker into the forward line will give more opportunity for our smaller players, Karko, Gresham, these sort of players, to increase their output. And they need to increase their output by a few goals if we're to get that 250 goals from our top 9 players. The third thing I think we need to do is our young player, Isaac Karko, probably needs to kick 20 goals. Now, this might seem optimistic. He's probably not going to play every game. I don't expect him to play every game. I expect he will probably start in the opening round of the season, but he is a young player. Young players don't play every game, but he is going to play in the forward line. And if he plays in the forward line, it's reasonable to expect that he should be able to kick a goal a match. Right? I don't think that is an unreasonable expectation for a player who is in the side to kick goals. So there's perhaps 20 goals we can get from a player that didn't play for us last year. The fourth thing we need to do is for Nick Martin to always play forward of centre. Now, Nick Martin last year kicked 15 goals. Now, this was pretty good. That's not a bad effort, but it's less than a goal a game. And I noticed that every single time they moved him forward, he always kicked goals, sometimes 2 or 3 goals. He played a lot of last season off the half-back line. I think this is a waste of his talent. I don't think he needs to play there. Yes, he can play there and get 25, 28 possessions, but is it good for the team for him to do that? I say no. Now, I'm not saying he has to spend all his time in the forward 50, but I think he needs to spend all his time forward of centre, not in the back line, forward of centre, in the centre or in the forward line. Now, I actually think Nick Martin could potentially kick 35 goals. That might seem like quite a lot, but if he plays 23 matches and if he plays all his time forward of centre, that's less than 2 goals a game. Now, every time he went forward last year, or seemingly every time, he would kick a couple of goals. If he spends the whole season forward, I think it's not unreasonable to expect a player like him, remembering also that there's a lot of natural improvement in Nick Martin. He's still a very young player. I think it's possible that he could still kick 35 goals and be the type of player that gets probably the most increase in their output in terms of his goal output. I think 40 might be pushing it, but I think 35 is actually possible if they use him the right way. The fifth factor I've got is Archie Perkins. Now, Archie Perkins has not reached his potential thus far, and he only kicked 5 goals last year. But we know Archie Perkins doesn't really play as a defender. He really plays, not really in the midfield, but as a utility midfield forward type player. He really should be kicking more than 5 goals. If he's going to finally reach his potential and finally reach the level of output that a player who was a high draft pick that we would expect him to be able to do, he needs to kick a goal a game. Now, I don't think a goal a game is necessarily unreasonable if he plays most of his time forward of centre, which a player like that does. The problem with Perkins is he tends to flash in and out of games. He'll do one nice thing a match and then be unsighted for the rest of the match. And you look at the stats sheet and he's had 13 possessions. But there is significant upside in his development. He's still young. And it's not unreasonable to suggest that he should increase his output from 5 goals last year. 5 goals last year is nothing. And I'm sure he can do more than that. Can he kick a goal a game? Well, I think if we're to reach that level of 250 goals from our top 9 players, he is a player that needs to do just that. The sixth factor is increased output from Harrison Jones, also a young player, and I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest that he can also average a goal a game. He averaged about a goal a game last year. He kicked 18 goals. But here's the thing. In his very first season, 4 years ago, he kicked 20 goals. So he did that in his first season. Now, he should be a better player now, entering his 4th or 5th season. So he kicked 18 goals last year. So his output last year was pretty much the same as what it was in his first season. I know he played a bit of the season on the wing. He wasn't always playing forward. But I think a player like Jones, who now should have grown into his body, he's built up, he's quite a big player, tall player, he's more than capable of averaging a goal a game, and at the very least maintaining that around 20 goals a season mark. I've got him down for 28. Like I've said, I'm taking a glass half full approach. If he plays 23 matches, can he kick 28 goals? That's 1 and a bit goals a game. I don't think that's unreasonable. The last factor is to have just the expected contributions from players like Draper, Gresham, Merritt and Langford. Now, Draper kicked 11 goals last year. I've got him down for a little bit more than that, and I'll show you my totals of what I think we need to kick. These players need to kick if we're to reach the level that they need to get to. Gresham kicked 19 goals last year. I've got him down for around the same amount, just a couple more. Merritt kicked 14 goals last year. I've got him down for pretty much the same, just a couple more. I'm increasing the output of these players because, like I said, glass half full approach. If we're to, get the ball into the forward line a bit quicker, which is something that we weren't doing last year with all those uncontested possessions, then that's, I think, tactically what we need to do, which should hopefully result in, a few more goals for some of these players. Langford is the other one. Now, Langford was our leading goal kicker last year. He kicked 43 goals. He actually kicked 51 goals the season before. So he's more than capable of kicking 50 goals because he's done it. So I've got him down for 53. So here's what I think needs to happen. Now, this might be an overly optimistic look at what our output needs to be for our forward line, but I'm not going to apologise for taking an overly optimistic look. The club needs to think big, and I think this is the type of output that we need to have. Now, I'm not saying this will happen. I don't necessarily think it will happen, but this is the type of output that we need if we are going to aspire to be a finalist and perhaps win a final. I've got Langford kicking around 53 goals, Martin kicking 38, Caddy kicking 28, Jones kicking 28, Perkins and Carco kicking 23, Gresham 22, and Merritt and Draper 18. Now, I've just left Guelphy off of that list. Guelphy was our 6th leading goal kicker last year. He kicked 15, but he's not going to be back in the team until round 5 or 6, or maybe even a bit later than that. So I'm sure he'll play some senior football, but due to the fact that he's not going to contribute for the full 23 matches, he might only play 12, 13, 14, 15 matches. He's probably not going to be in our top 9 goal kickers. The other player that kicked double-figure goals for us last year was Sam Durham, who kicked exactly 10 goals from 22 matches. So there'll be hopefully a spread of goal kickers from number 10 through to number 18, 19, from players like Davey, Menzies, Redmond, Parrish, Shield, Caldwell, Cox, etc., etc. Now that gives us 251 goals, which is less than the Geelong total of 268 from last year and Brisbane of 294, but it's around the mark of what a reasonable team should get. Now, like I said, that might be difficult, it might be overly optimistic, but we'll see. I think all those things are possible. I think all those things are individually possible for those players. I just don't know if they're all possible to happen in the same year at the same time. But that's really what needs to happen. We need 250 goals from our best 9 goal kickers. What do you guys think? If you like this channel, please consider subscribing. And as always, have a great day.